So, did you know that Thai restaurants, and the reason why there are so many in the US, is because there is kind of a stipend or an assistant from the actual Thai government, in order to help you open restaurants in America. I found this out. This is like really weird. It's from a Vice article very recently. I'll actually link it down in the description below. But it's the idea that Thailand had, I believe it started after World War II, which was that they wanted to propagate Thai culture to other different countries and nations, right? And one way that they would do this is by their cuisine. And so they allowed, mostly like Thai immigrants and stuff from, other countries and whatnot, like Thai immigrants in America, for instance, to get this kind of stipend and help them open Thai restaurants in America. And so that's why there's so many Thai restaurants in America, strangely. But the point of that is that is an exportation, export, yeah, an export product, I guess, of culture, right? It's to say, okay, like this is some good that we can export over into other countries, and that helps the image of the Thai culture or the Thai government, etc. So, how that relates to what happened recently with ESL and Faceit, previously they had merged together, and then they were bought by the Savvy Gaming Group, which is funded by the Saudi Arabian government. And so the reason why that relates to the Thai scenario is this is what the Saudi government is doing, is that they are using esports in order to make themselves and their nation look good, right? They're exporting culture. They're exporting, this certain good to the rest of the world, primarily America and European countries. And then obviously it's going to be like South Korea and China. So first we have to ask ourselves, and this is kind of in relation to mostly just CSGO, which ESL operates, it's been touted like 80% of the CSGO tournaments. And then Dota, they operate a lot of their tournaments as well. Not so much for League of Legends or Valorant. Valorant, actually, they do operate some of their tournaments. For League of Legends, I believe they only operate some of the ERLs over in the LEC region, right? So this has kind of little bearing on League of Legends itself, but I'll still get to some of the other parts of what League of Legends and maybe the broader ideas of this, right? But first, should ESL have sold themselves to this group to begin with, right? Because we have to think in the ethics of it all, right? And this is the thing that's going on in everyone's head, is that, well, the Saudi Arabian government, they have a lot of laws against women or gays or, any like LGBTQ like type things. And I think it was like recently women were just allowed to be able to drive. I want to say this was in like 2019 or something like that. So they're very like way in the past on shit like this and like women's rights and stuff like that. So how can you say ethically that you want to support something like that of a government, which is not very inclusive at all? So first, should ESL have sold themselves to that? Like, that's what you first have to think of ethically. Now, you could think, okay, well, they did get the fucking bag for this, because if you look at the sale of it, it was more than $1 billion. Now, compare that to what Amazon bought Twitch for, which was $970 million, which was a steal, right? At that point, there's no realistic way that ESL was ever going to get an offer of $1 billion. That's ridiculous. So, the money was kind of blinding them, and probably it was, okay, what's your number? And when someone asks you that question, that blank check question, it becomes a little bit, enticing, right? And this is, I think, the ethical struggle that everyone deals with whenever money is ever brought up, right? And this is the whole idea of, on a smaller scale, let's put this on like a way smaller scale of that on, like Craigslist or used car forums, etc. Some owners won't even sell their old car, their old classic car or something. Say they have a S13, or maybe they have a EK9 or something that they're selling, or I guess for you American guys, like a old school Dodge Dart or something. Like, they won't even sell those old cars to a young kid because they're just like, you're probably gonna fuck this up, so nah. Like, I want to give this to someone that I know will take care of it. I'm going to give it to, a 30-year-old or a 40-year-old or something, right? And he has enough money to restore it, take care of it, and I want it to go to a good place. So ESL, they maybe didn't really do that, right? So that's the first ethical question. The second one is it ethical to work for ESL now? As a caster, as someone on the production crew? Is it ethical to be a team, in their circuit? These are all questions that is on everyone's mind of how much of the trail do you want to be down from, that money, right? And then third, obviously, is it ethical to even watch ESL tournaments in Counter-Strike or in Dota or in the ERLs of League of Legends, right? So previously we had this debacle in the League of Legends space, right? With the Neom deal. And for those that didn't know about this deal, it was a sponsorship for the LEC that was trying to happen. I believe it was in July of 2020, if I'm not mistaken. And this was at a time to where people figured out that Neom is actually this like government funded thing from the Saudi Arabian government as well. And they were trying to create this futuristic city over in Saudi Arabia. And in doing that, they actually had to take land from what was called I'm going to fuck this up. So it's the Huaytat tribe, and they had existed on this land for hundreds of years, and they essentially shoved these guys out and were just like, you're in our fucking bulldozer way, get the fuck out of here. And so obviously that's incredibly ethically dubious. On top of that, and this wasn't covered by really anyone that I saw in that news cycle, that Riot Games had even held an event in Saudi Arabia before in 2019. And this was at the, it's called the, I'm going to fuck this name up too, Riyadh Season Festival. It's spelled Riyadh, where at the larger part of the festival, by which it's not clear if this was at the specific Riot event or not, but women were arrested for public indecency and wearing tight-fitted clothing. They actually went to jail for that. So, like, that's how far back in the fucking past these guys are, on like some fucking 1800s type shit. And so with that, and that's the Saudi Arabian government. It's like, how can you ethically support something like the Neom deal as we know it? And everyone was attacking like the LGBT type stuff, and how obviously they have laws against that type of shit. And then on top of that, it was even more ridiculous that Riot had allowed this deal to even get to that extent of almost, given the green light over at the LEC. Well, it technically did get the green light. But how did this guy named Owner Tamer, probably fucking that name up, but he is part of the METAI of Riot Games, which METAI stands for Middle East, Turkey, Africa, India. And he was the general manager of that entire region for Riot Games. So he's a key member of Riot Games, and he was a leader for the Riada season festival. So surely Riot Games could have reached out to this dude who probably knows culture in Saudi Arabia quite well because he represents that entire fucking region. They could have just reached out to this dude and been like, hey, yo, you ever hear of this shit? Like, what's going on with this? You know, how did this festival go over in, you know, the Riyadh festival? And he could have given the lowdown, but they just decided to do their own shit and not do their homework. So, and then on top of that, they ended up drawing back the deal and said, well, it was just presented in the wrong way. It's like, no, that wasn't it at all, dude. It's literally just the ethics of the entire deal itself, and the fact that it has ties to the Saudi Arabian government, who are against a lot of progressive things, that also in esports is a very progressive industry to begin with. And you wonder why. It's because we have the most level playing field of any sport ever in existence. Well, I'm not going to say that. Probably chess beats that, but there was some fucking rules for women not being able to play chess anyway, so I guess we kind of beat them on that. But let's talk about blood money, because there's this idea that everyone is separated by 6 degrees. It's called 6 degrees of separation, and the fact that if you know someone, that person knows, you know, like 100 people, and then that person, you know, and all those people know 100 other people, and so on and so forth. And so you could see how the spider web goes out. And that's the same thing with companies, you know, and the whole idea is, how comfortable are you seeing the degrees of separation when it comes to blood money, when it comes to fucked up, unethical stuff that governments, or rather companies, do? And like, let's not fucking ignore the elephant in the room, which is the US government, which has done really fucked up shit. Like, there's been drone strikes over in the Middle East that have killed children, and there's been, you know, CIA operative shit that have literally overthrown governments, like in Guatemala, where the government was actually overthrown for some fucking bananas. And I literally mean that. Look up Edward Bernays. And so you have to wonder how comfortable you are with those degrees of separation, right? Same thing with like smartphones. How do you think smartphones are built? Your smartphone was probably built off of child slave labor. Cobalt mining, which is used in basically all modern batteries nowadays, and how cobalt mining in Africa, you have to go way down in those fucking mines, and they often use children in order to do that. Like, how comfortable are you driving your Tesla now? So what degree are you really comfortable with? And this, you know, comes out to even like greater things, like simple things, you know, as far as like eating organic food or eating biodynamic food. Yeah, I bet you, like, most of you guys don't even know what the fuck that is, right? Which biodynamic is using basically, it's like biodynamic and regenerative farming, to where you don't harm the soil. So now we're going from, you know, like genetic seed construction from Monsanto versus, you know, like organic, and then now biodynamic and regenerative farming, so that you don't fuck up the soil, which is a very big problem, because if you guys don't know, farming, a lot of land is actually rented out to farmers, right? So the landowner rents these like plots of land, and the problem with that is that essentially they don't care who farms on the land. And so oftentimes you'll get consecutive crops of the same crop, like corn, for instance, which is largely subsidized by the US government. And so that's why there's such an abundance of corn in the US. That's why we have fucking all our chips are made of corn. Our gas is made of corn. You know, we make like plastics with corn and shit, like everything corn, right? But problem is yeah, regenerative farming and whole side tangent. But that comes to myself and my point. And like, what are the degrees of morality that I'm comfortable with? This is why I don't work for Invent Global or Upcomer, right? And like, this is a small thing, but the fact that Invent Global, they pulled the article of Hashinshin. Someone had an article or an interview that they did with Hashinshin during his like sexual accusations, I guess, with minors. And it's not the fact that, you know, whether he did it or not, I don't care about that. It's the fact that it was pulled, even though it was an interview just asking him questions about said topic, right? And people view that as, oh, you're giving him a platform to defend himself, etc., right? Even though you can ask questions and serious questions in a particular way in order to draw out answers, right? But, you know, that's the same idea of, well, if I had a chance to interview someone like Hitler or someone like Stalin, like, yeah, I'm gonna interview that person, right? Or, you know, like Fidel Castro, I'm gonna interview that person, right? Because I want to get into the mind of someone that is so warped like that, to be able to understand that. Because otherwise, if you have no information within, you know, the wide world about this guy's mindset, you're never going to be able to solve the fundamental problem of their mind, right? You're never going to be able to solve how a murderer thinks. You're never going to be able to solve how a rapist thinks. You're never going to be able to solve how a psychopath thinks unless you're actually able to do that kind of work. So that was my whole debacle of Invent Global. And once I saw that, I was like, okay, that kind of puts me off. Same thing with Upcomer, and why I've never reached out to them for employment, because they're it's like the video editor in chief was the former guy that worked for The Score that basically ripped off all fucking videos of Thorin or Richard Lewis, have ripped off various articles from a whole bunch of different journalists. I'm not cool with that. And you think that my Riot Light article would have been published at either of these outlets? Nah, there's no fucking way in hell. If they can't tolerate a fucking Hashinshin article, like, they certainly aren't going to have that published and have heat from Riot or, you know, heat from fucking Facebook or anyone, right? Because Riot Light works for fucking Facebook. And I even talked to Richard Lewis about this, and he was like, yeah, actually, I tried to do an article about Riot Light before, and it actually got axed. No publication was willing to publish it. And I have beef with that shit, you know? It's like, if you're such a pussy to not be able to publish any of these articles at any of these different outlets, right? These outlets just won't take his shit. It's like, what does that say about those outlets then, right? And so, but, you know, I can afford to not publish at those places, right? Or even request to be on their team, etc., right? Like, I can afford that because I'm not all in on esports. I'm part-time, right? So I can choose where I want to work, where I want to publish, if I want to put out articles or not, if I want to create shit articles to meet some fucking different quota or whatever. I can choose not to do that because I'm not tied to the ground by money at all. Like, I could just say, fuck you. I publish shit on my own. I don't care. I don't make any money from this YouTube video, in fact. So that brings me to my other point, which is, and this is the main point, luxury beliefs in esports. So this term luxury beliefs is actually something that comes from a guy named Rob Henderson, who is going for his PhD. He's a PhD candidate at, I believe it's Oxford. And he did this article, I'll link it down below, but it talks about luxury beliefs being a status symbol for the rich, specifically for rich Americans. So when you think of that, you're like, well, what are luxury beliefs? Essentially, they're beliefs that don't have an impact really on the rich, but have impact on the poor, right? So it's something that they can afford to have a belief in because it doesn't really affect them, but it affects other people. And the game of, I guess, ethics or morality gets changed to where it only harms the people down below. So, and this is something that money cannot attain, right? This is a new status symbol, right? And so now the rich can play amongst themselves, and really it's something that money can't attain anyways, right? So you have everything else, so why not try and get these luxury beliefs? Now, when you think of that, you think of probably people like Frankie Ward over in Counter-Strike. You've seen her at the LCS as well too, doing some hosting gigs and stuff. And she was one of the people that was very outspoken about the Neom deal. And she's been very outspoken as far as, these social issues, I guess, within esports. And yet now she is still going to work for ESL because she has a contract with ESL, which she says that she can't break. And you have to think, isn't that kind of a luxury belief? Isn't that something in which she projected her morality onto others? By the way, that's what it. A lot of people get confused the word moral and ethic, right? So I'll tell you the difference. Ethics is a belief that is held among a large group of people. So America has ethics, right? We believe that women should have the right to vote. That's an ethic for us. Or that women should be able to work. That's an ethic, or drive, whatever. Saudi Arabia has different ethics, right? Morality is what you believe in yourself, right? Just you. Those are your morals. Now, that may be shared by a lot of different people, but morality is only based on your thought and your thought only, which is oftentimes influenced by ethics or other people's morality, and they may force their morals upon you. And so really this is luxury morality. Like, that's really what it is, which they're trying to change morality into ethics, right? And that's how it all flows, essentially. And so now you're just like, well, that's fucking hypocritical, right, of Frankie. But then you have to think, well, the game has changed now that she has a baby and she's providing for someone. So, like, where does it all weigh down, in terms of that? Does then that precede the morals in which she had before? Now does that supersede the morals that she had? Like, that's something maybe that you have to question. It's kind of like the whole scenario of stealing bread to feed your family. It's like, stealing is unethical. Yes, we all know that. But stealing bread to feed your baby. So, it's the same thing with Froskern. Now, is she going to be able to boycott all of ESL? I mean, I guess now she works for fucking G4, but now, is she going to condemn all the people that work for ESL now and call them out and say that that's all bullshit, right? Just like she did with the whole Neom deal. I mean, it's basically the same fucking thing. Hell, it's even the same parent people, right? The Saudi Arabian government. So this is the problem with virtue signaling, is the fact that eventually these luxury beliefs and stuff get thrown back onto you at some point, if then they become the ethical norm, right? And so I like to make this akin to the idea of, like, say Amazon, and how Amazon is this huge monopoly that treats their workers like shit. That's a terrible company that does terrible things in a lot of different countries, that does slave labor, child labor, etc. That, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but what happens is if a vendor on Amazon does very well, say, I don't know, you sell fucking lip balm on Amazon and your company is doing really well on Amazon, what Amazon will do is they'll look at those analytics and say, maybe we should make an Amazon Basics lip balm because that guy's doing really well over there. And so they'll end up either buying you out so that then they can make lip balm, or they'll make their own lip balm, sell it as Amazon Basics, put it on the front page of Amazon above all your shit, and now you're screwed. Your business is fucking destroyed. That's what Amazon does. That's how they function, just on a fundamental level. And now you think, oh, that's fucked up to work for Amazon. What happens if you are in a small town and all that you have is an Amazon warehouse and, 6 other businesses? Like, obviously you're going to work at the fucking Amazon warehouse, no matter how shitty they treat you, because that's the only thing that your backwater town has. And so now are you going to virtue signal on that person for working for Amazon? It's like, well, when you think about it in those terms, it's not so black and white, is it? So fundamentally, I think the best way to control someone and the best way to not be controlled by anyone is to have multiple sources of income, right? Because if you think about it fundamentally within the modern world, money is one of the few universal games that we all play, right? Because, at the end of the day, we're all playing a game, right? Survival is like the essence of what we're all doing, right? That's like a fundamental basis of human reality. But on top of that, we've created like this level of abstraction, and we do that with games. And the fact that all of us are playing this game, which surrounds money, right? It's, okay, how can I get this money to do this and to do that? And maybe I can get higher status with this money, or maybe I can get access to, like certain different crowds with this money. Maybe I can get access to different mates with this money, right? And so if you aren't controlled by that fundamental source, no one can control you. Like, say an employer, like, you don't have to listen to them because you have copious amounts of money. That's like a huge weight off your shoulder, right? And that's why everyone says follow the money, because the money is one of the big strings which controls people. It's like people are controlled by money, how you are able to acquire a mate, right? Like children, housing, which is in relation to money, and food, which is in relation to money as well. And it's like, as long as you have those like 5 things, you're kind of good. No one can really control you. And as we know, monopolies themselves are also terrible because they are able to acquire mass amounts of control due to what I said before, which is money, because companies generate money. And so if you are able to be a monopoly, then you control a large amount of money. And so therefore you can control a large amount of people. That's why monopolies are fundamentally bad. So what I'm trying to say in all of this, and this is the fundamental takeaway of this video, is that the young people listening, especially you guys, since you probably haven't made up your mind about it, is to make peace with the degree of separation that you can handle to have your morality be upheld. Because this is something that you're going to fundamentally come across no matter what. Because we're all, as we grow within the world, right? Because I keep kind of coming back to this idea, but it's true, in the fact that because our communication can travel so fast now, and so therefore that means that there becomes more conglomerates, right? Like, you think fucking Nestle owns like 50 companies or whatever the fuck, right? And then Google owns a whole bunch of these different subsidiaries, and Microsoft owns a whole bunch of shout out to Activision Blizzard now. So you have to fundamentally decide at what level you're comfortable taking blood money, because you're going to take blood money no matter what. Like, whether that be by consuming products or actually taking money from a dubious company or a company that relies on money from a dubious company, just like in this case. So the whole problem within esports itself is not so simple. And so maybe that's why also too, you shouldn't try and put your luxury beliefs on others, because probably at some point in some day, it's going to come back to you. Unless you're just fucking ultra rich, then you could tell everyone to fuck off. Just what I was saying before, because everyone gets controlled by money. So if you don't have that money, you can't afford that belief.